literally on a panel watching women twerk.
Blessings, 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 ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the show. I am your host, Lance Single, and this is the Arguments Lead Man Cave. Man Cave, this is what I created for the fellas to get together and have, deep discussions concerning anything from men's health to religion, science, mythology. It doesn't matter what it was that was on my mind when I created this page. It was definitely for men to get together and have these discussions. I don't like to argue with women. I don't like to have a certain type of debate with women because I go hard when it comes down to this information. And I don't want you to be caught in the crossfire, my ladies, my females. I don't want y'all caught in the crossfire of discussion. Now, you are very welcome and definitely included. But this space was generated for actual Israelite men to have these discussions. Okay, what I want to bring to y'all today, as the title states, impending doom soon to come, because that's the whole that's what religion is basically derived from: past cataclysmic events, and those who needed answers sought the face of God for this information. And that's conjecture, of course. That's anybody's guess. But what I want to first do is introduce y'all to a couple of books that I've been reading over the past few months. One in particular is called the Kolbrine Bible. All right, and then I got the Sibyllian texts, which are female prophetess during the Greek period. We might also bring some things from the Quran and a couple of articles that I want to introduce you guys to, explaining the Kolbrine Bible. Let's get off into it. Let's read this first. All right. The Kolbrine, a history-changing 3,600-year-old lost Bible. Give me a second. Actually, I want to wait a little bit because I'm not even seeing that I'm generating anything, actually. Let me go to here. Okay, it says it's going. All right, it's going. Back to the information. Okay, the Kolbrine Bible, a history-changing 3,600-year-old lost Bible. This is from educateinspirechange.org. Okay, it says, among the many things described in the so-called Kolbrine Bible, we find it narrates the story of human creation and mentions the existence of ancient cultures that lived on Earth before the arrival of Adam and Eve, the so-called pre-Adamites. It is considered as one of the most debated ancient manuscripts that mention the existence of a highly advanced civilizations on our planet before written history. In those days, men will have the great book before them. Wisdom will be revealed, and few will be gathered for the stand. And in the hour of trial, the dauntless ones, the stout-hearted, will survive. This is in the Book of Manuscripts, chapter 3, verse 10. He said, while many are unaware that it actually exists, the Kolbrine narrates the story of events forgotten to history. Some of the descriptions written in the Kolbrine are said to even foretell our history, while other details the ancient book predict cataclysmic events that are yet to occur on Earth. The Kolbrine is viewed as a Bible equal to the classic Christian Bible. I agree. After you read the book, bro, you're gonna actually be able to see that these books, that the Bible is written for uneducated people who don't have knowledge of science and other things. They're childlike people, And I'm guessing because this book was given to those who survived the cataclysmic events that I'm about to get off into that keep reoccurring every 2,000 years or so. Right? It is believed to include fascinating details concerning certain passages such as the flood and the Exodus. The Kolbrine Bible authors also pointed out the importance of the destroyer as a key figure in both of these events and described numerous cataclysmic events yet to occur. The Kolbrine Bible is a compilation of ancient documents hidden for centuries and preserved by alleged secretive groups for nearly 1,000 years. The ancient writings are said to have been salvaged from the Glastonbury Abbey arson in 1184. Some authors even claim there is a profound connection between the ancient texts and Jesus Christ. Many authors agree that the Kolbrine Bible is a secular anthology dating back more than 3,600 years. It is said to have been written at the same time as the Old Testament. It was authored by numerous writers extending from the ancient Egyptians to the ancient Celtics. Curiously, just as there are two parts, the Old and the New Testament, the Kolbrine Bible is also composed of two editions which make up a total of 11 books. The first 6 books that make up the Kolbrine Bible were recorded in by the ancient Egyptians, while the remaining editions were penned down by ancient Celtic priests. I, on the other hand, this is my conjecture, I am leaning towards the possibility that these ancient Egyptians and these ancient Celtic priests are actual Israelites. They're actual Israelites. And I'll show and point it out along the discussion, along this this lesson. I'll show you why I say so. It says many researchers and authors consider that the oldest parts of the Kolbrine were composed after the Exodus, which according to many scholars occurred is sometimes during the 15th century BC. It is viewed by different authors as the first Judeo-Christian document which details human evolution, creationism, and intelligent design. The mathematical principles of the Kolbrine seem to reflect the interests of the ancient Druids in astronomy and mathematics and address global cataclysms of the past. The ancient manuscript describes the story of human creation and details the existence of ancient civilizations that lived on Earth before the arrival of Adam and Eve. The first piece of the Kolbrine Bible includes the creation story, which is perceived both as religious and as a scientific text. The last 2 volumes of and you know why they say this? It says it's considered a religious and scientific text because it's stuff in the Kolbrine Bible that wasn't figured out until recent history, such as the life force in man is found in the bones. DNA is extracted from the bones, brother. Another thing is that it mentions dinosaurs. You know, it mentions beasts that made elephants look like rats, the size of rats. So it's a very religious and scientific book. I rock with it. I'm telling y'all, read the Kolbrine Bible. I'm not telling you put down the Holy Bible because they go hand in hand. You need the Holy Bible for a teacher. Like it's like an introduction syllabus, if you will. And these other books are once you have been educated about the idea of a God and people and creation and science and all of the sorts, then you go off into these books. And it seems that they have been hidden for this very purpose because humanity had not reached a level of intelligence to be able to get these books, to understand them. Okay, it says the last 2 volumes of the Kolbrine are dedicated to Jesus. Interestingly, the ancient manuscripts, also called the Bronze Book or the Kolbruk, explains the fallen angels also mentioned in Genesis. It speaks of mortal men who married the daughters of Adam and Eve and had children together. The most curious part is that it contradicts the most common belief that divine beings interbred with mortal humans. In the book of manuscripts, chapter 3, verse 3, it says, when ages pass, certain laws operate upon the stars in the heavens. Their ways change There is movement and restlessness. There is no longer constant, and a great light appears readily in the skies. In 4 it says, when blood drops upon the earth, the destroyer will appear, and mountains will open up and belch forth fire and ash. Trees will be destroyed and all living things engulfed. Waters will be swallowed up by the land, and seas will boil. In manuscripts, chapter 3, verse 6, it says, the people will scatter in madness. They will hear the trumpet and a battle cry of the destroyer, and will seek refuge within the dens of the earth. Dens in the earth. So after reading, I think it's called the Book of Creation, or the Origins, it states that because of these cataclysms, the men that survive, that aren't welcome on the surface land, created a place for people to come after said cataclysms, or in preparation for said cataclysms. So a lot of these underground chambers, holding 100,000 people here and 200,000 people there, it is said that these were built by said people. All right, it says the people will scatter in madness. They will hear the trumpet and battle cry of the destroyer, and will seek refuge within the dens in the earth. Terror will eat away in their hearts, and their courage will flow from them like waters from a broken pitcher. They will be eaten up in the flames of wrath and consumed by the breath of the destroyer. Okay, so that's a nice introduction to the Kolbrine Bible. Now let me get off into it. There are many. The book is just as thick as the Holy Bible, but the book I want to start with is the Book of Manuscripts. And this is the opening. It says, men forget the days of the destroyer. Only the wise know where it went, and that it will return in its appointed hour. So it's going to happen again. So all this information that I'm about to show you, keep in mind that it's been written to happen again and again and again. And this is the cleansing of the earth. It happens over and over. And there are signs that are telltale. You cannot, when it says that men and women shall be as one, and women will no longer hold a womanly garment. Let me get off into it, dog. Let me get off into it. It says, chapter 1, scroll of Imad. I can't see if anybody's watching. It's not showing on Facebook, so I don't know. Oh, here we go. There we go. It's on. All right, let's get it going. All right, it says, the writings from the olden days tells of strange things and of great happenings in the times of our fathers who lived in the beginning. All men can know of such times is declared in the Book of Ages, but the gods had their birth in the events of things which were in the beginning. It is told in the country yards that there was a time when heaven and earth were not apart. The truth echoes even there, for heaven and earth are yet joined in men. It is written that God once walked the earth with men and dwelt within a cave above a garden where men labored. God encompasses all that is and cannot be contained in a cave. Look to the sacred writings for truth. And he like, that's BS. And God ain't walk around here. He like, that's BS, bro. Said it's written. Says, look to the sacred writings for the truth. Said, it is told that women made God angry, and he took himself into the sky. Dang. Women then pissed off God, and he broke out. Nah, that didn't happen, because he's going to show you. It says, removing heaven from man because of his disgust for women. It is also told that men offended God by imitating him. These are lies. These are tales made by man. So God didn't walk the earth and live in a cave above men, and nor did God leave earth because of women or because men imitated God. So this is not wisdom For the sacred writings reveal the plans of God, and these things cannot be as told. It is the talk of courtyard. It's almost like saying bar talk or barbershop talk. It is the knowledge of the outer place. Men talk of the land of Oben, from whence they came. Not from Oben toward the south came men, for the great land of Ramakui first felt his step. Out by the encircling waters, over the rim, it lay. Wow, out by the encircling waters. That's a baby in the water. Circling waters. It says, there were mighty men in those days, and of their land. The first book speaks this. Their dwelling place were set in the swamplands from whence no mountains rose, in the land of many waters slow flowing to the sea, in shallow lakelands among the mud, out beyond the great plain of reeds, at the place of many flowers beckoning plant and tree, where trees grew beards and had branches like ropes, which bound them together, for the ground would not support them. There were butterflies like birds and spiders as large as the outstretched arms of man. The birds of the air and fish of the water had hues which dazzled the eyes. They lured men to destruction. Even insects fed of the flesh of men. There were elephants in great numbers with mighty curved tusks. The pillars of the netherworld were unstable. In a great night of destruction, the land fell into an abyss and was lost forever. I'm under the impression that the pillars of the netherworld were unstable. The land fell into the abyss, and I'm under the impression, from my own studies, that the netherworld was where the Netherlands are. It says the netherworld, but the netherworld, but I believe it is where the Netherlands are, because there is a large continent that has recently been discovered beneath the Netherlands. All right. So that is a fourth of the earth. So you got South America, South Africa, Australia, and the netherworld, or the Netherlands, or now today it's called not Netherlands. I met New Zealand. And the place is called Zealand. All right. So let me finish. It says, so here you got written 3,600 years that a portion of earth fell into the abyss and was lost forever. That's the key factor. Let me continue. It says, when the earth became light, next day, man saw man driven into madness. All was gone. Men clothed themselves with the skins of beasts and were eaten by wild beasts. Things with clashing teeth used them for food. A great horde of rats devoured everything, so that man died of hunger. The brain eaters. What? The brain eaters. The brain eaters hunted men down and slew them. Children wandered the plain land like the wild beasts, for men and women became stricken with a sickness that passed over the children, and issues covered their bodies, which swelled up and burst, while flames consumed their bellies. Every man who had an issue of seed within him, and every woman who had a flow of blood died. The children grew up without instruction, and having no knowledge, turned to strange ways and beliefs. They became divided according to their tongues. So, wow. So in this time period, men and women got sick, but the children didn't. So men and women had died and left their children roaming the earth without instruction. So the wild men and wild women, this is where this probably come from, the stories of those. It said the children grew up without instruction, and having no knowledge turned to strange ways and beliefs. They became divided according to their tongues. This was the land from whence man came. The great one came from Ramakui, and wisdom came from Zidor. The people who came with Nadhai were wise in the ways of the seasons and in the wisdom of the stars. They read the book of heaven with understanding. They covered their head with potter's clay and hardened it, for it was not their custom. They covered their dead with potter's clay and hardened it, for it was not their custom to place their dead in boxes. Those who came with the great one were cunning craftsmen in stone. They were carvers of wood and ivory. The high God was worshipped with strange light in places of great silences. They paid homage to the huge sleeping beast in the depths of the sea, believing it to bear the earth on its back. They believed its stirrings plunged lands to destruction. Some said it burrowed beneath them. In Ramakui, there was a great city with roads and waterways, and the fields were bound with walls of stone and canals. In the center of the land was the great flat-top mountain of God. The city had walls of stone and was decorated with stones of red and black, white shells and feathers. There were heavy green stones in the land and stones patterned in green, black, and brown. There were stones of Saka, which men cut for ornaments, stones which became molten for cunning work. They built walls of, so they made mortar. Excuse me. They basically was making mortar. They made eye reflectors of glass stone. What? They made glasses, which cured the ills of men. They cured men. This is 3,600 years ago, and they made eye reflectors of glass stone, which cured the ills of men. They purified men with a strange metal and purged them of evil spirits in flowing fire. We dwell in a land of three peoples. No, so this land right here that is being made reference to is Egypt. So all you Egyptologists out there, you Cometians, make sure you pay attention to this 3,600-year-old book written by Egyptians. Make sure you pay attention. Listen up. It says, we dwell in a land of three peoples, but those who came from Ramakui and Zidor were few in numbers. It was the men of Zidor who built the great guardian, which ever watches, looking towards the awakening place of God. It says, the day he comes not, its voice will be heard. In the olden times, when men lived in the ground, what? When men lived in the ground, okay? In the olden times, when men lived in the ground, speaking of those caverns that were built by prior people for said cataclysms that I will get into, it says this, it says, in the olden times when men lived in the ground, there came the great one whose name is hidden, son of him, son of the sun, chief of the guardians of mystery, master of rights and the spoken word, judge of disputes, advocate of the dead, interpreter of the gods, and father of fishermen. From the west, from beyond Mandi, came the great one, arrayed in robes of black linen and wearing a headdress of red. Who taught men the secrets of writing and numbers and the measurements of the years? Who taught the ways of the days and months? Who read the meaning of clouds and the writing of the night lights? Who taught the preservation of the body, that the soul might commune with the living, and that it might be a doorway to the earth? Who taught that light is life? That's interesting. It said, who taught the preservation of the body, and the soul might commune with the living, and that it might be a doorway to the earth? Who taught the light is life? Who taught the words of God, which spoke to men and hid things from them, which stood in the place of truth for those with understanding, which spoke to the priests, the scribes, and the people differently according to their enlightenment. So here we got another example of that. It said, so who was this that spoke to the priests and the scribes and the people differently according to the knowledge that they had? So this is why I said the Bible is written the way that it is, and it's lacking a lot of information, because at the time the Bible was being not written, compiled. We got to remember the Holy Bible is a compilement of scrolls. So at the time it was being compiled, and at the time it was being translated, the people were not as knowledgeable. The overall the people overall wasn't as knowledgeable. So therefore the Bible was given in the way that it is, in allegories and stories, so that it be easily remembered. Okay, it says, who taught that beyond the visible is the invisible, beyond the small is the smaller, and beyond the great is the greater, and all things are linked together in one. That right there alone is science. That right there, this beyond, it says beyond the visible is the invisible. We know this to be true. Beyond matter, there are things that make matter what it is. There are things that make up matter. You know what I'm saying? So we have protons, electrons, and neutrons, but that is the smaller. So protons, electrons, and neutrons is of atoms, and atoms is of matter. You know what I'm saying? So there are things that are smaller than a small, and then a smaller, and things that can be seen that are excuse me, things beyond visibility. There are things that are invisible. So this is great knowledge, especially written 3,600 years ago. It says, who taught the song of the stars, and which now no man knows, and the words of the watchers which are lost? Who taught men to grow corn and to spin, to make bricks, fashion stone after a cunning manner? Who taught men the rituals of the seashells, and the reading of their mysteries, and the manner of their speech? Who taught men the nature of knowledge of God, but in the years left to him could not bring them to understanding? Who then veiled the great secret in simple tales which they could remember, and in signs which would not be lost to their children? See that? Well, this was why we got the Bible in the form that we have, because it says this, basically what it says. Who taught men the nature of and the knowledge of God, but in their years left him could not bring them to understanding? Who then veiled the great secrets in simple tales? So the great secrets were told in simple tales, which could be remembered in signs and wouldn't be lost to the children. It says, who brought the sacred eye from the distant land, and the stone of light made of water, by which men see God, and the firestone which gathered the light of the sun before the great shrine? He died in the manner of men, though his likeness is that of a god. Then they cut him apart, that his body might make fertile the fields, and took away his head, that it might bring them wisdom. His bones they did not paint red. For they were not as those of others. These are the words of the sacred writings recorded after the old customs, as they are. So let them be, for that which is recorded remains with you. The stone of light and the firestone were stolen in those days of disaster, and none now knows the resting place. Therefore the land is empty. The scroll of Kamushere says, in the fertile black land, we know that to be Egypt. Right? Listen, in this fertile black land, there are those who worship the sun. They call it the greatest and the most bountiful among all gods, the seer of heaven, the orb of glory. They tell many tales about the coming of the sun people and of the land from whence they came. They also tell of the squalid manner in which men dwelt before the golden one led his people hence. He came to this fertile land. Now it is a pleasant place with many great cities and contented villages. There is a great broad river of fresh water, which rises and falls in its due season. Canals there are and waterways, which led the fertilizing waters unto great things, the herbage and the trees. There are flocks of sheep and herds of cattle on the green pastures. It was not ever thus in the days before Herakita came. So it wasn't like this before Herakita came. So this dude brought knowledge to the black land, where before he came, people were worshiping the sun. It said, all was barren and desolate, not divided the wilderness from the swamplands. And it said, nothing divided the wilderness from the swamplands filled with reeds. Then there were no cattle or sheep, and the land knew not the hand of man. It lay until and unwanted. So it was nothing there before Herakita came. It said, no land was sown, for they who dwelt in it knew not the making of waterways, nor did they know how to command the water and make it flow at their behest. There were no cities, and men dwelt in holes in the ground, or in places where the rocks cleft. They walked in their nakedness and clothed themselves with leaves or bark, while at night they covered themselves with the skin of wild beasts. They fought with the jackal for food and snatched dead things from lions. They pulled roots from out of the ground and sought for sustenance among things that grew in the mud. They had none to rule over them, nor had they had leaders to guide. They knew not obligation or duty. None spoke to them about their manner of life, and none knew the way of truth. They were truly unenlightened in those days. Then came the servant of the sun, and he was who brought the people together and put rulers over them. He set Ramur, is that Ra? Up as king over the whole land. He showed them, man and woman, how to dwell together in contentment as husband and wife. He divided their tasks between them. He instructed men in the sowing of corn and growing of herbs. He instructed them in the tilling of the ground and the matter of cutting the waterways and canals. It says, it was who showed men the ways of the beasts of the field. He instructed the men in working of gold and silver and making vessels from clay. He instructed men in hewing and cutting stone and the building of temples and cities, the making of linen and dyeing cloths that form garments of ever pleasing to the eyes. He did not teach. Neither did he instruct them in the making of brick or the working of copper. Then when he departed, he bade the people not to weep, for though he went to his father, the Son would adopt them as his children, and all could become sons of the Son. Thus many became sons and servants of the Son, and they believed what they had heard, that the Son was their Father, the light of goodness, overlooking the whole land. In this, it is this light that sustains all living things, but within it greater light which sustains the spirit. It is the light that enlightens the heart of men. There are lesser lights that guide men about their daily tasks and shield them from the harm. There are unseen lights that influence men for good or ill. But it is the great light that banishes coldness and makes all men warm. The warmth it bestows ripens the harvest of men and makes his herds yield their increase. It oversees the whole activity of men on earth as it journeys the skies from one end to the other. Thus it knows the needs of all men. Therefore, be like the sun. Be far-seeing and foresighted. Be regular in your comings and doings while about your daily tasks. And that's a good point. I like that. Have a routine. All right. It says, when their guide and leader left, the people knew themselves as children of the sun. They were warlike and subdued other people in its name and brought them under its rule. The great temples were raised up to it, and for a time it displaced the greater gods which the people of this land had set up in their ignorance. The one true God it never displaced. For the true God was ever hidden from the eyes of the profane and ignorant. Then some priests among those who followed the rule of the sun stole its spirit and brought it down, so that it enleavened the statues and images of their gods. Thus the spirit which enlevens all the lesser gods is but the one spirit held in captivity, and not many of the people as the people think. It was one spirit. I said, then came the wise ones from the east, and they caused the people to have other thoughts. They were men who knew the ways of heaven and asked of the people, is the Son Spirit indeed supreme? Is not this thing requiring much thought? Consider its movements. Are they more like those of one who is directed in his comings and goings? Does it move about freely as it wills? Or is it restricted and held in its appointed path like a yoked ox? Or as the ass treading out corn? Does it rise up from the nether world as it will, or go down into the caverns of darkness by its own decree? Is its path not more like that of a stone hurled forth by a hand of man? Is it not like a boat controlled by the will of man rather than a free-ranging God? Is it not more like a slave under the direction of a master? These things disturbed the heart of the people. Some pondered upon them, but others in the manner of men cried death to those who deny the truth of these things. They're like, nigga, you don't believe in the Son? You don't believe the Son is God? Nigga, death to you. However, because of these things said, the worshipers of the older gods grew in strength, for the people had never turned to Sirah, who was with them before the first water canal was cut. He was not the God of the highborn, but of the lowly people. This is a land of two peoples, the two nations, two priesthoods, two streams of wisdoms, two hierarchies of gods. It is a land where the light of truth burns brightly, though hidden away from the eyes of all but a few, in the land of the dawning earth. So this land is Egypt. There was two manner of people there. You had Israelites and you had the Egyptians. And the Israelites brought knowledge to the Egyptians. According to this 3,600-year-old book, Commissions and Egypt, what you call a motherfucker? Egypt, you Egyptians. Kemet believers says, men forget the days of the destroyer. Only the wise know where it went, and that it will return in its appointed hour. It rages across the heavens in the days of wrath, and this was its likeness. So this is what it was like when it came. This is what it looked like. It was a billowing cloud of smoke enwrapped in a ruddy glow, not distinguishable in joint or limb. Its mouth was an abyss from which came flame, smoke, and hot cinders. When ages pass, certain laws operate upon the stars in the heavens. Their ways change, their movement and restlessness. They are no longer constant, and a great light appears readily in the skies. So it's a big red light in the sky. And the constellations are no longer flowing in their normal courses when they come. It says the heavens will burn brightly. Sorry, where is that at? Where was that? It says when blood drops upon the earth, the destroyer will appear. The mountains will open up and belch forth fire and ash. So the volcanoes will erupt. The trees will be destroyed and all living things engulfed. Waters will be swallowed up by the land and seas will boil. The heavens will burn brightly and readily. So it'll be bright red. There will be a copper hue over the face of the land, followed by a day of darkness. A new moon will appear and break up and fall. The people will scatter in madness. They will hear the trumpet and battle cry of the destroyer and will seek refuge within the dens of the earth. And that's what my niece just said. She said people gonna go crazy when they see this stuff happening. People gonna go crazy. All right. It says, The trees will be destroyed and all living things engulfed. Waters will be swallowed up by the land and seas will boil. What's happening to the waters? Look at the Euphrates. Look at the water in Florida, the coastlines. What's happening? See what I'm saying? It's happening. This is why I don't know. I guess I don't even care about y'all salvation, real talk. I don't know why I'm being led to teach and show y'all this information, because I just want to show my family and teach my children if it's in their day, and prepare my family, if it's in this day, our day, today. But I'm being led, y'all. It's a boilingness in my spirit to learn this information and bring it to you. I don't know why, but this has been put on my heart all my life. And anybody who knows me knows this fact. 50 years and 30 years with many of y'all know me. It says, when blood drops upon the earth, the destroyer will appear and mountains will open up and belch forth fire and ash. Let me go down. It says, the heavens will burn brightly. I already read that. All right. People will scatter in man. Okay. It says, the people will scatter in madness. So when you see the sky turn red and the water start disappearing, said niggas gonna go crazy. It says they will hear the trumpet and battle cry of the destroyer and will seek refuge within the dens of the earth. Terror will eat away their hearts and their courage will flow from them like water from a broken pitcher. They will be eaten up in the flames of wrath and consumed by the breath of the destroyer. Thus it was in the days of the heavenly wrath, which have gone, and thus it will be in the days of doom when it comes again. The times of its coming and going are known unto the wise. These are the signs and times which shall precede the destroyer's return. 110 generations shall pass into the west, and nations will rise and fall. Men will fly in the air as birds and swim in the seas as fish. Men will talk peace with one another. Hypocrisy and deceit shall have their day. Women will be as men and men as women. Passion will be a plaything of man. A nation of soothsayers shall rise and fall, and their tongue shall be the speech learned. A nation of lawgivers shall rule the earth and pass away into nothingness. One worship will pass into 4 quarters of the earth, talking peace and bringing war. What's that? Christianity. What's that? Talking peace and bringing war. Let's go back, bro. Listen to the signs. Look at the signs. 110 generations shall pass into the west, and nations will rise and fall. Men will fly in the air as birds. Was it airplanes 3,600 years ago? Why would this prophet say such a thing? It said, and swim in the seas as fishes. Men will talk peace with one another. Hypocrisy and deceit shall have their day. Women will be as men, and men as women. Passion will be a plaything of man. Is that not a sign? I mean, is this not upon us? Think about it. Are we not living in this time right now? Are we on the doorstep of this impending doom? I'm just trying to show y'all what's been written is coming back. It's happening again. Say one worship will pass into 4 quarters of the earth, talking peace and bringing war. A nation of the seas will be greater than, it says, a nation of the seas will be greater than any other, but will be as an apple rotten at the core and will not endure. A nation of traitors will destroy men with wonders, and it shall have its day. Then shall the high strive with the low, the north with the south, the east with the west, and the light with darkness. Men shall be divided by their races, and the children will be born as strangers among them. Ain't that where we at now? Ain't that where we at? We right there. Maybe that's why it's a burning in my heart, because Out of all of the stuff that I read, I know the time is close. And maybe the Most High has put the spirit in his children that are charged with teaching the people to bring this information forth. And it is by the Most High Spirit that this information comes by them. I don't care about this stuff, bro. I'd rather be making beats, rapping, flying my drone, and you know what I'm saying? Doing stuff that I enjoy doing in life. But after I learned that life here on earth is not for pleasure, it's a learning place. It's a place that you learn to sharpen the sword of your soul. Men shall be divided by their races, and the children will be born as strangers among them. Brothers shall strive with brother, and husband with wife. Fathers will no longer instruct their sons, and the sons will be wayward. Women will become the common property of men and will no longer be held in regard and respect. Is that not where we at? It says, then men will become ill at ease in their hearts. They will seek, they know not what, and uncertainty and doubt will trouble them. They will possess great riches, but be poor in spirit. Then will the heavens tremble and the earth move. Are we not rich, but poor in spirit? Do we have to walk 50 miles for a glass of water? Do we have to wait days to eat? Or do we have to hunt for our food? We spoiled, we content, we comfortable. We just go to the store and buy anything we need. We don't have to go out and hunt. Ain't we there? Are we greatly rich? Look at your house. You talking about your lawns and shit, yeah, and your car. That's rich. Then will the heavens tremble and the earth move. Men will quake in fear, and while terror walks with them, the heralds of doom will appear. They will come softly as thieves in the tomb. Men will not know them for what they are. Men will be deceived. The hour of the destroyer is at hand. So they will see all the signs, but they won't know what they are. They'll see the wonders, but they won't be able to relate to them. They won't know what it is. They just going to experience it, and then, like a thief in the night, or a thief in the tomb, as is written, the destroyer is at hand. It said, in those days, men will have the great book before them, wisdom will be revealed, and few will be gathered for the stand. Like right now. How many people are going to pay attention to this that I'm bringing out? This is one of the most important books that humanity can ever read. Yet, I bet you nobody's going to pay attention to this. It said, in those days, men will have the great book before them, wisdom will be revealed, and few will be gathered for the stand. It is the hour of trial. The dauntless ones will survive. The stout-hearted will not go down to destruction. Great God of all ages, alike to all, who sets the trials of men, be merciful to our children in the days of doom. Man must suffer to be great, but hasten not his progress unduly. That's true. When we content, we do not grow. Just look at one person for an instance. If a man, look at smart, like people who grew up with money, they're not that smart. They're not the most wisest people who had money. They don't give a damn about your knowledge, and they don't care about God or none of that in most instances. It says, man must suffer to be great, but hasten not his progress unduly. In the great winnowing, be not too harsh on the lesser ones among men. Even the son of a thief has become your scribe. Chapter 4, the Destroyer, Part 2. This is from the book of the manuscripts in the Kolbrine Bible, chapter 4, verse 1. O sentinels of the universe, watchers, O sentinels of the universe who watch for the Destroyer, how long will your enduring vigil last? O mortal men, who wait without understanding? Where will you hide yourselves in the dread days of doom, when heavens shall be torn apart and the skies rent in twain, in the days when children will turn gray-headed? That's written in the Quran. That's written in the Quran. Let me see. Did I bring that up? 54. Let me see. Fifty-four 16, I think it is. Oh, it's in 54. I can't remember where exactly, but it's written in the Quran that children's head will turn gray. Okay. This is the thing which will be seen. This is the terror your eyes will behold. This is the form of destruction that will rush upon you. Okay. So this is what it's going to look like. This is what he saw. They saw in their day. This was what was written before them. So they're confident in what they're writing in these scriptures. It says, there will be a great body of fire, the glowing head with many mouths and eyes ever changing. It said, terrible teeth will be seen in formless mouths, and a fearful dark belly will glow readily from the fires inside. Even the most stout-hearted man will tremble, and his bowels will be loosened, for this is not a thing understandable to man. It said men shall, so in the Bible it says men shall see things that cause their heart to stop in that day. Men shall see things that cause them to shit on themselves. Come on. What can you see that's so messed up, that's so horrible, so horrific, terrifying, that it caused you to shit on yourself? It said it will be a vast sky spanning from enwrapping form, a vast sky spanning form enwrapping earth, burning with many hues within wide open mouths. These will descend to sweep across the face of the land, engulfing all the yawning jaws. The greatest warriors will charge against it in vain. The fangs will fall out, and lo, there are terror-inspiring things of cold-hardened water. Great boulders will be hurled down upon men, crushing them into red powder. Where do rocks come from? The evidence is all around us. Where do boulders come from? Boulders are not born, but yet they lie scattered across the earth, coming seemingly from nowhere. Not falling off of mountains or nothing. They're just scattered all throughout the earth. Boulders. Great boulders will be hurled down upon men, crushing them into red powder. As the great sea salt waters rise up in its train and roaring torrents pour towards the land, even the heroes among the mortal men will be overcome with madness. There's going to be tsunamis. Tsunamis from the ocean. As moths fly swiftly to their doom in the burning flame, so will these men rush to their own destruction. The flames going before will devour all works of men. The waters flowing will sweep away whatever remains. The dew of death will fall softly as gray carpet over the cleared land. Men will cry out in their madness, "Oh, whatever being there is, save us from this tall form of terror. Save us from the gray dew of death." The men gonna cry out to God, whatever being it is, help us, save us. You know what I'm saying? So the doomsday, the doom shape called the destroyer in Egypt was seen in all the lands thereabout. So everybody's seen it. All eyes shall see in that day. So I'm telling you, what is it called? It's like a proxy. Jesus is a proxy. Not Jesus the man, but Jesus the God. His said return is a proxy for this destroyer. So this was seen from Egypt and also in lands thereabouts. It says, in color, it was bright and fiery, in appearance changing and unstable. It twisted about itself like a coil, like water bubbling into a pool from the underground supply. And all men agree it was the most fearsome sight. It was not a great comet or a lucent star, being more like a fiery body of flame. A human, like a anthropomorphic flame of fire is what I'm assuming, because it's not a comet. It said it's not a great comet or a lucent. This 3,600 years ago. The nigga like it's not a comet, y'all. It's not a star or a falling star. This thing is like a fiery body of flame. It seems movements on high were slow. Below it swirled in the manner of smoke, and it remained close to the sun, whose face it hid. It blotted out the sun. And again, there was bloody redness about it, which changed as it passed along its course. It caused death and destruction in its rising and setting. I dreamed about this before. When I was a kid, like this exact description. I didn't know what it was. Wow, that just brought back a crazy memory. I remember dreaming that. It says there was a bloody redness about it, which changed as it passed along its course. It caused death and destruction in its rising and setting. It swept the earth with great cinder rain and caused many plagues, hunger, and other evils. It bit the skin of men and beasts until they became molted with sores. The earth was troubled and shook. The hills and mountains moved and rocked. The dark smoke filled heaven's bow over earth, and a great howl came to the ears of living men, born to them upon the wings of the wind. It says, the dark smoke filled heaven's bow over the earth, and a great howl came to the ears of living men, born to them upon the wings of the wind. So niggas heard a great howl. All that was living heard a great howl that came with the wind. It said it was the cry of the dark Lord, the master of dread. Thick clouds of fiery smoke passed before him, and there was an awful hail of hot stones and coals of fire. The doom-shaped thunder sharply in the heavens, and the shout out bright lightnings. It says the doom-shaped thundered sharply in the heavens and shout out bright lightnings. The canals of water were turned back onto themselves when the land tilted, and great trees tossed about and snapped like twigs. Then a voice like 10,000 trumpets was heard over the wilderness, and before its burning breath, the flames parted. The whole of the land moved, and mountains melted. Do you ever see melted mountains? I seen melted mountains. I wonder what happened to them. There's an explanation. It's an explanation for all of that shit, bro. 3,600 years ago, written. The sky itself roared like 10,000 lions in agony, and great arrows of blood sped back and forth across its face. Earth swelled up like bread upon the hearth. This was the aspect of the doom shape called the destroyer, when it appeared in the days long gone by, in the olden times. It is thus described in the old records, few of which remain. It is said that when it appears in the heavens above, earth splits open from the heat, like a nut roasted before the fire. Then flames shoot up through the surface and leap out about like fiery things upon black blood. Is that oil? Is that oil being set on fire? Black blood, is that oil coming out of the ground and it's on fire. Then flames shoot up through the surface and leap about like fiery things upon black blood. The moisture inside the land is all dried up. The pasture and cultivated places are consumed in flames, and they, all trees, become white ashes. The doom shape is like a circling ball of flame, which scatters small fiery offsprings in its train. It covers about a fifth part of the sky and sends withering snake-like fingers down to earth. Before it, the sky appears frightened, and it breaks up and scatters away. Midway is no brighter than the night. It spawns a host of terrible things. These are things said of the destroyer in the old records. Read them with solemn heart, knowing that the doom shape has its appointed time and will return. It would be foolish to let them go unheeded. Now, men say, such things are not destined for our days. May the great God above grant this to be so. But come, the day surely will, and in accordance with his nature, man will be unprepared. Wow. Just wow. Niggas gonna not be ready for this. In the Bible, it says men will be carrying on. Marriage will continue. Knowledge will increase. See how in the Bible it writes, it's written like it's not really descriptive. It's an overall outcome is pointed out, which is why I said it's a great companion. This is a great companion to the scripture. Chapter 6, the dark days. The dark days begin with the last visitation of the destroyer, and they were foretold by strange omens in the sky. All men were silent and went about with pale faces. The leaders of the slaves, which had built a city to the glory of Thom, stirred up unrest, and no man raised his arm against them. So this leader is Moses. I'm gonna let y'all know right now. You find that out later on, that the leader of the slaves in Egypt that had built the great city of Thom, he went into Egypt and he told now this is going on after. This is in the midst of the destroyer. Before the destroyer, hold on, let me see. Let's continue to read, because I'm almost sure that this happens around the time of the Exodus. It says, the leaders of the slaves, which had built a city to the glory of Thom, stirred up unrest, and no man raised his arm against them. They were foretold great events of which the people were ignorant, and of which the temple seers were not informed. These days of ominous calm, when people awaited for they knew not what, the presence of an unseen doom was felt. The hearts of men were stricken. Laughter was heard no more, and grief and wailing sounded throughout the land. Even the voices of children were stilled, and they did not play together, but stood silent. The slaves became bold and insolent, and women were the possessions of any man. Fear walked the land, and women became barren with terror. They could not conceive, and those with child aborted. All men closed up within themselves. So don't the scripture refer to something? It says, pray that you are not with child in that day. Ain't that what's written? Let me continue. It says, the days of stillness were followed by a time when the noise of trumpeting and shrilling was heard in the heavens. And the people became as frightened beasts without a herdsman, as asses when lions prowl without their foal. The people spoke of the God of the slaves, and reckless men said, if we knew where this God were to be found, we would sacrifice to him. But the God of the slaves was not among them. He was not to be found. This still going? Let me see something. It is. Oh, let me see if somebody on here makes some. Yo, I appreciate those that's watching. I see I got 2 viewers. Hey, I appreciate y'all watching, and a blessing will come to you for knowing this information. Y'all hold it dear to your heart, because I wouldn't even waste my time putting this up if it was not so. All right, let me continue. It says, but the God of the slaves was not among them. He was not to be found within the swamplands or the brick pits. His manifestation was in the heavens for all men to see. But they did not see with understanding, nor with any God listen. For all were dumb because of the hypocrisy of men. The dead were no longer sacred and were thrown into the waters. Those already entombed were neglected, and many became exposed. They lay unprotected against the hands of thieves. So after this great cataclysm, grave robbers went out and looted all of the riches. It says, he who once toiled long in the sun, bearing the yoke himself, now possessed oxen. He who grew no grain now owned the storehouse full. He who once dwelt at ease among his children now thirsted for waters. He who once sat in the sun with crumbs and dregs was now bloated with food. He reclined in the shade, his bowels overflowing. So the meek inherited the earth. This is a great companion to the scripture. Trust me. Cattle were left unattended to roam into strange pastures, and men ignored their marks and slew the beasts of their neighbors. No man owned anything. The public records were cast forth and destroyed, and no man knew who were slaves or who were masters. The people cried out to the Pharaoh in distress, but he stopped his ears and acted like a deaf man. There were those who spoke falsely before Pharaoh and had gods hostile towards the land. Therefore the people cried out for their blood to appease it. But it was not these strange priests who put strife in the land instead of peace. For one was even of the household of Pharaoh and walked among the people unhampered. Dust and smoke clouds darkened the sky and colored the waters upon which they fell with a bloody hue. So this red blood water. And this is all in Egypt. This is from the perspective of an Egyptian, y'all. This is during the Exodus. This is all of this is pre and post Exodus. It says, dust and smoke clouds darkened the sky and colored the waters upon which they fell with a bloody hue. Plague was throughout the land, and the river was bloody, and blood was everywhere. The water was vile, and men's stomachs shrank from drinking. Those who did drink from the river vomited it up, for it was polluted. The dust tore wounds in the skin of men and beasts, and the glow of the destroyer, the earth was filled with redness. Vermin bred and filled the air and face of the earth with loathsomeness. Wild beasts afflicted with torments under the lashing sand and ashes came out of their lairs in the wasteland and cave places and stalked the abodes of men. All the tame beasts whimpered, and the land was filled with the cries of sheep and moans of cattle. Trees throughout the land were destroyed, and no herb or fruit was to be found. The face of the land was battered and devastated by a hail of stone, which smashed down all that stood in the path of torment. They swept down in the hot showers, and strange flowing fire ran along the ground in their wake. The fish of the river died in polluted waters. Worms, insects, and reptiles sprang up from the earth in huge numbers. So there go your frogs. There go your frogs. The plague of the reptiles, right? That's in the Bible. 7 plagues or so, right? Something like that. Shit, great gusts of wind brought swarms of locusts. There go your locusts, which covered the sky. This 3,600 years old, y'all. Great gusts of wind brought swarms of locusts, which covered the sky. As the destroyer flung itself through the heavens, it blew great gusts of cinders across the face of the land. The gloom of a long night spread a dark mantle of blackness, which extinguished every ray of light. None knew when it was day and when it was night, for the sun cast no shadow. The darkness was not the clean blackness of night, but a thick darkness in which the breath of men was stopped in their throats. Men gasped in a hot cloud of vapor, which enveloped all the land and snuffed out all lamps and fires. Men were benumbed and lay moaned in their beds. None spoke to another or took food, for they were overwhelmed with despair. Ships were sucked away from their moorings and destroyed in great whirlpools. It was a time of undoing. The earth turned over as clay spun upon a potter's wheel. The whole land was filled with uproaring from the thunder of the destroyer overhead and the cry of the people. There was the sound of moaning and lamentation on every side. So the whole earth was affected by this event. It says the earth spewed up its dead, corpses were cast out of their resting places, and the embalmed were revealed to the sight of all men. Pregnant women miscarried, and the seed of men was stopped. So nobody was bringing children out. Nobody brought forth any children. All right, so that means that numbers, so the destroyer took a great number of people, and then wasn't no babies being born. The craftsman left his task undone, the potter abandoned his potter wheel, and the carpenter his tool. They departed to dwell in the marshes. All crafts were neglected, and the slaves lured the craftsmen away. The dues of Pharaoh could not be collected, for there was neither wheat nor barley, goose nor fish. The rights of Pharaoh could not be enforced, for the fields of grain and pastures were destroyed. The highborn and the lowly prayed together that life might come to an end, and the turmoil and thundering ceased to beat upon their ears. And that's what this says in the scripture. Men would long for death but could not die. I don't know if this is a exact reference, but it brings to mind. It says terror was the companion of men by day, and horror their companion by night. Men lost their senses and became mad. They were distracted by frightfulness. On the great night of the destroyer's wrath, when its terror was at its height, there was a hail of rocks, and the earth heaved as pain rent her bowels. Gates, columns, and walls were consumed by fire, and the statues of gods were overthrown and broken. Ain't that what it looked like in Egypt? Look at the destruction in Egypt right now today, and you will see, man, if y'all ain't rocking with this, bro, this book, I rock with this book. It said people fled outside their dwellings in fear and were slain by the hail. Those who took shelter from the hail were swallowed when the earth split open. The habitations of men collapsed upon those inside, and there was panic on every hand. But the slaves who lived in huts and in reeds at the place of pits were spared. The land burnt like tinder. A man watched upon his rooftop, and the heavens hurled wrath upon him, and he died. The land withered under the wrath of the destroyer and groaned with the agony of Egypt. It shook itself, and temples and palaces of nobles were thrown down from their foundation. The highborn ones perished in the midst of the ruins, and all strength of the land was stricken. Even the great one, the firstborn of Pharaoh, died. There is a part of the story with the highborn, okay? with the highborn in the midst of the terror of the fallen stones. So, wow. I mean, just wow, bro. The highborn ones perished in the midst of the ruins, and all the strength of the land was stricken. Even the great one, the firstborn of Pharaoh, died with the highborn in the midst of the terror and fallen stones. The children of princes were cast into the streets, and those who were not cast out died within their abodes. There were 9 days of darkness and upheaval, while a tempest raged such as never been known before. When it passed away, brother buried brother throughout the land. Men rose up against those in authority and fled from the cities to dwell in tents in the outlands. Egypt lacked great men to deal with the times. The people were weak from fear and bestowed gold, silver, lapis lazuli, turquoise, and copper upon the slaves. So remember when the after said plagues hit Egypt, the Egyptians felt like, you know, in the scripture, let's just get them out of here. So they gave all the gold and silver and gave ornaments and chalices to the priests on their way out, according to the scripture. Hold on, excuse me. It said Pharaoh alone remained calm and strong in the midst of the confusion. The people turned to wickedness in their weakness and despair. Harlots walked the streets unashamed. Women paraded their limbs and flaunted their womanly charms. Highborn women were in rags, and the virtuous were mocked. The slaves, spared by the destroyer, left the accursed land forthwith. So this is when the Israelites left Egypt. Now they was there for 400 years, right? Actually, they wasn't there they was there for 400 years, but they was slaves like 219 years or some shit like that. Okay, so the slaves spared by the destroyer. This is an Egyptian text. This is the Exodus from an Egyptian perspective. The slaves spared by the destroyer left the accursed land forthwith. The multitude moved in gloom of a half dawn under a mantle of fine swirling gray ash, leaving the burnt fields and shattered cities behind them. Many Egyptians attached themselves to the host, for one who was great led them forth, a priest prince of the inner courtyard. So this is Moses. And it says many Egyptians went with him. It says fire mounted upon high, and its burning left with the enemies of Egypt. So this goes to the pillar of fire that guarded their rear, right? And the cloud that followed them, that led them, right? So this is all in the scripture. I mean, it's just a more detailed description of said events that happened in the Bible. Right? In 7 days, by Rimrar, the accused ones journeyed to the waters. The accursed ones journeyed to the waters. They crossed the heaving wilderness while the hills melted around them. Above, the skies were torn with lightning. They were sped by terror, but their feet became entangled in the land, and the wilderness shut them in. They knew not the way, for no sign was constant before them. It says they turned before Nashari and stopped at Shekoth, the place of quarries. They passed the waters of Maha and came to the valley of Pikaroth, northward of Mara. They came up against the waters which blocked their way, and their hearts were in despair. The night was a night of fear and dread, and there was a high moaning above, and black winds from the underworld were loosed. The fire sprang up from the ground. The hearts of the slaves shrank within them, for they knew the wrath of Pharaoh followed them and that there was no way of escape. They hurled abuse on those who led them. Strange rites were performed along the shore that night. The slaves disputed among themselves, and there was violence, right? Pharaoh had gathered his army and followed the slaves after he departed. There were riots and disorders behind him, for cities were plundered. The laws were cast out of the judgment halls and trampled underfoot in the streets. The storehouses and granaries were bust open and robbed. Roads were flooded and none could pass along them. People lay dead on every side. The palace was split, and the princes and officials fled, so that none were left. The authorities with authority to command. The list of numbers were destroyed. Public places were overthrown, and households became confused and unknown. Pharaoh pressed on in sorrow, for behind him was all desolation and death. Before him were things he could not understand, and he was afraid. But he carried himself well and stood before his host with courage. He sought to bring back the slaves, for the people said their magic was greater than the magic of Egypt. The host of Pharaoh came upon the slaves by the saltwater shores, but was held back from them by the breath of fire. A great cloud was spread over the host and darkened the sky. None could see except for the fiery glow and the unceasing lightning which rent the covering cloud overhead. So this cloud, look, that's in the scripture. It says a whirlwind arose in the east and swept over the encamped hosts. A gale raged all night, and in red twilight dawn there was a movement of earth. The waters receded from the seashore and were rolled back on themselves. There was a strange silence, and then, in gloom, it was seen that the waters had parted, leaving a passage between. The land had risen, but it disturbed and trembled. The way was not straight or clear. The waters about were as if spun within a bowl, and the swampland alone remained undisturbed. From the horn of the destroyer came a high shrilling noise which stopped the ears of men. The slaves had been making sacrifices in despair. Their lamentations were loud. Now, before the strange sight, there was hesitation and doubt. For the space of breath they stood still and silent. Then all was confusion and shouting, some pressing forward in the waters against all who sought to flee back from the unstable ground. Then in exaltation, their leader led them into the midst of the waters through the confusion. Yet many sought to turn back into the host behind them, while others fled along the empty shores. All became still over the sea and upon the shore, but behind the earth shook and boulders split with a great noise, and wrath of heaven was removed to a distance, and stood upwards of the two hosts. Still, the host of Pharaoh held his rank, firm in resolve before the strange and awful happenings, and undaunted by the fury which raged by their side. Stern faces were lit darkly by the fiery curtain. Then the fury departed, and there was silence. Stillness spread over the land, while the host of Pharaoh stood without movement in the red glow. Then with a shout, the captains went forward, and the host rose up behind them. The curtain of fire had rolled up into a dark pillowing cloud, which spread out as a canopy. There was a stirring of the waters, but they followed the evildoers past the place of the great whirlpool. The passage was confused. They called the Israelites the evildoers. It says the passage was confused in the midst of the waters, and the ground beneath unstable. Here, in the midst of the tumult of waters, Pharaoh fought against the hindmost of the slaves and prevailed over them. There was a great slaughter amid the sand and the swamp of the water. The slave, see how they said that? The sand and the swamp of the water. So the water was lifted out of its original position. And what's at the bottom of the sea? Sand. details. It says, the slaves cried out in despair, but their cries were unheeded. Their positions were scattered behind them as they fled, so that the way was easier for them than those who followed. Then the stillness was broken by a mighty roar, and through the rolling pillars of cloud, the wrath of the destroyer descended upon the hosts. The heavens roared as with 1,000 thunders, and the bowels of the earth were sundered, and the earth shrieked in its agony. The cliffs were torn away and cast down. The dry ground fell beneath the waters, and the great waves broke upon the shore, sweeping the rocks from seaward. The great surge of rocks and waters overwhelmed the chariots of the Egyptians who went before the footmen. The chariot of the Pharaoh was hurled into the air as if by a mighty hand, and was crushed in the midst of the rolling waters. The tidings of the disaster came back by Ragab, son of Tomah, who hastened on ahead of the terrified survivors because of his burning. Said, he brought reports onto the people that the host has been destroyed by blast and deluge. The captains had gone, the strong men had fallen, and none remained to command. Therefore the people revolted because of the calamities which had befallen them. Cowards slunk from their lairs and came forth boldly to assume the high offices of the dead. Calmly and noble woman, their protectors gone, were their prey, and the slaves, the greater number, had perished before the host of Pharaoh. The broken land lay helpless, and the invaders came out of the gloom like Karen. A strange people came up against Egypt, and none stood to fight, for the strength and courage were gone. So what happens after the Israelites leave Egypt? Written in history shortly after that, who happened? The Hyksos comes in and takes over the Egyptians. It says the invaders led by Al-Kenan came up out of the land of gods, because the wrath of heaven, which had laid their land waste. There too had been a plague of reptiles and ants and signs of omens and an earthquake. There also had been turmoil and disasters, disorder and famine, with the great breath of the destroyer sweeping the ground and stomping the breath of men. And Turah gathered together the remnants of his fighting men and the fighting men who left in Egypt, and set forth to meet the children of darkness who came out of the eastern mountains by way of the wilderness and by way of Yathnobis. They fell upon the stricken land from behind the great cloud, before lifting the darkness and before the coming of the purifying winds. When Ragab went to Pharaoh and met the invaders at Hirosha, but the hearts of the Egyptians were faint within them. Their spirits were no longer strong, and they fell away before the battle was lost, deserted by the gods above and below, their dwellings destroyed, their households scattered. They were as men already half dead. Their hearts were still filled with terror, with memory of the wrath which had struck them from out of the heaven. They were still filled with the memory of the fearsome sight of the destroyer, and they knew not what they did. Pharaoh did not return to his city. He lost his heritage and was seized by a demon for many days. His women were polluted and his estates plundered. The children of darkness defiled the temple with rams and ravished the women who were crazed and did not resist. They enslaved all who were left, the old, young men, and boys. They oppressed the people, and their delight was in mutilation and torture. Pharaoh abandoned his hopes and fled into the wilderness beyond the province of the lake, which is in the west towards the south. He lived a goodly life among the sand wanderers and wrote books. Good times came again, even under the invaders, and ships sailed upstream. The air was purified, the breath of the destroyer passed away, and the land became filled again with growings with growing things. Life was renewed throughout the land. Kyr taught these things to the children of light in the days of darkness, after the building of Rambudith, before the death of Pharaoh Ankh. This is written in this land and our tongue by Lueder, who himself chose it for saving. It was not seen until the latter days. All right. Okay, and this is the readings. See what this is. And this is the reading of the events concerning the great cataclysm that is upon us. Now, wait a minute. I got more. Okay. In the book of Adam and Eve, the story of Adam and Eve, this book right here, written by Chan Thomas, was taken after it had been published by the CIA, and it had been kept by the CIA for over 50 years. And because of the law that got passed where they had to release information, forgot what that act is called, this book came out, but it was minus like 50 pages or so. So it was 50 pages that the CIA took out. It says, in early 1960s, Thomas Chan wrote a book titled Adam and Eve Story and attempted to have it published by Emerson House in Los Angeles. Soon after publishing the full issue, the CIA classified his book for 50 years. An FOIA lawsuit was filed against the CIA to release the book. Boom. Why did the CIA take this book? I'm gonna show you why. It's called The Next Cataclysm. Like Noah's 6,500 years ago, like Adam and Eve's 11,500 years ago, this too will come to pass. This is written in 1965, all right? It said, with a rumble so low as to be inaudible, growing, throbbing, then fuming into a thunder roar, the earthquake start. Only it's not like any earthquake in record history. In California, the mountains shake like ferns in a breeze. The mighty Pacific rears back and piles up into a mountain of water more than 2 miles high, then starts its race eastward. With the force of 1,000 armies, the wind attacks, ripping, shredding everything in its supersonic bombardment. The unbelievable mountain of Pacific seawater follows the wind eastward, burying Los Angeles and San Francisco as if they were but grains of sand. Nothing but nothing stops the relentless, overwhelming onslaught of wind and ocean across the continent, and the 1,000-mile-per-hour wind wreaks its unholy vengeance everywhere, mercilessly, unceasingly. Every living thing is ripped into shreds while being blown across the countryside, and the earthquake leaves no place untouched. In many places, the Earth's molten sublayer breaks through the spread of sea and of white-hot liquid fire to add to the Holocaust. Within 3 hours, the fantastic wall of water moves across the continent, burying the wind, ravaged land under 2 miles of seething water coast to coast. In a fraction of the day, all the face of civilization, basically, all vestiges of civilization are gone, and the great city, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Chicago, Dallas, New York, are nothing but legends. Barely a stone is left where millions walked just a few hours before. A few lucky ones who managed to find shelter from the screaming wind on the lee side of the Pikes Peak watched the sea of molten fire break through the quaking valleys below. The raging waters follow, piling higher and higher, steaming over the molten earth fire and rising almost to their feet. Only great mountains such as this one can withstand the cataclysmic onslaught. North America is not alone in her death throes. Central America suffers the same canoid, wind, earth, fire, and inundation. The South America finds the Andes not high enough to stop the cataclysmic violence pounded out by nature in her berserk rage. In less than a day, Ecuador, Peru, and western Brazil are shaken madly by the devastating earthquake, burned by molten earth fire, buried under cubic miles of torrential Pacific seas, then turned into a frozen hell. Everything freezes. Man, beast, plant, and mud are all rock hard in less than 4 hours. Europe cannot escape the onslaught. The raging Atlantic piles higher and higher upon itself, following the screeching wind eastward. The Alps, Pyrenees, Urals, and Scandinavian mountains are shaking and heave even higher before the wall of the water strikes. Western Africa and the sand of the Sahara vanishes in nature, wrath under the savage attack by wind and ocean. The area bounded by the Congo, South Africa, and Kenya suffers only severe earthquakes and winds, no inundation. Survivors there marvel at the sun, standing still in the sky for nearly half a day. Eastern Siberia and the Orient suffer a strange fate indeed, as though a giant subterranean Scythe sweeps away the earth's foundation, accompanied by the wind in its screaming symphony of sonic death and destruction. As the Arctic basin leaves its polar home, Eastern Siberia, Manchuria, China, and Burma are subjected to the same annihilation as South America. Wind, earth, fire, inundation, and freezing. Jungle animals are shredded to ribbons by the wind, piled into mountains of flesh and bone, and buried under the avalanche of seawater and mud. Then comes the terrible, paralyzing cold. Not man, nor beast, nor plant, nor earth is left unfrozen in the entire Eastern Asian continent, most of which remains below sea level. East of Urals in western Siberia, a few lucky people survived the frantic winds and quakes. Antarctica and Greenland, with their ice caps, now rotate around the Earth in the torrid zone, and the fury of wind and inundation marches on for 6 days and nights. During the 6th day, the oceans start to settle in their new homes, running off the high ground. In the 7th day, the horrendous rampage is over. The Arctic Ice Age ended, and a new Stone Age begins. The oceans, the great homogenizers, have laid down another deep layer of mud over the existent strata and the Great Plains. And this is why we keep finding shit intact under mud and rock. Whole cities found under mud. Right now in the ocean, there are whole cities where civilizations once were, they are no longer. All right. It says Grand Canyon, Painted Desert, and Badlands. It says the great homogenizers have laid down another deep layer of mud over the existent strata and Great Plains as exposed in the Grand Canyon, Painted Desert, and Badlands. The Bay of Bengal Basin, it said the Bay of Bengal Basin, just east of India, is now the North Pole. The Pacific Ocean, just west of Peru, is now the South Pole. Greenland and Antarctica are now rotating equilaterally in the torrid zone. Find their ice caps dissolving madly in the tropical heat. Massive walls and water and ice surge toward the oceans, taking everything from mountains to plains and gushing heaving path, creating immense seasonal moraines. In less than 25 years, the ice caps are gone, and the oceans around the world rise over 200 feet with the newfound water. The torrid zone will be shrouded in fog for generations from this enormous amount of moisture poured into the atmosphere by the melting ice caps. New ice caps began to form in new polar areas. Greenland and Antarctica emerged with verdant tropical foliage. Australia is the new unexplored continent in the North Temperate Zone, with only a few handfuls of survivors populating its vastness. New York lies at the bottom of the Atlantic, shattered, melted by earth fire, and uncovered by unbelievable amounts of mud. Of San Francisco and Los Angeles, not a trace is left. Egypt emerges from its Mediterranean inundation, new and higher, still the land of the ages. The commonplace of our time becomes a mysterious ballback of the new era. A new era. Yes, the cataclysm has done its work well. So it says, yes, the cataclysm has done its work well. The greatest population regulatory of all dues once more for man what he refuses to do for himself, and drives the pitiful few who survive into a new stone age. Once more, the earth has shifted its 60-mile thick shell, with the poles moving almost to the equator in a fraction of a day. Again, the atmosphere and oceans refusing to change direction with the earth's shell have wiped out almost all life. After this tumble, we join Noah, Adam and Eve, Atlantis, Mu, and Olympus. And Jesus joins Osiris, Torah, Zeus, and Vishnu. So, wow. So again, this book. So I guess this is a prophecy or prediction. The next cataclysm. But it would be my guess that they read books like the Kolbrine or the Sibyllian and many others that tells of this particular incident that happens throughout humanity over and over. But let's get to this. This great destroyer has a common name. It's called Nibiru, right? And this article written by Greg Jenner in 2011 makes a connection of the 10 lost tribes with this event. And I want y'all to get this too, because I'm trying to prove to y'all that this Kolbrine Bible is written by Egyptian Israelites and by Irish Israelites, Celtic Israelites. All right. It says the Qumri people write, the wrath of the sky monster, destroyer, was loosened in heaven. It lashed about in the flaming fury. Now look, hold on. Mind you, in that last, in the book of the manuscripts, it says the slaves survived. The slaves survived the judgment. Their God saved them. And what's my point? Well, my point is our God will save us from this event. He will save us, but he has to not find fault with us. How does our God find fault with us? By not adhering to his laws and statutes that have been written so that we generate good energy within us, good light, that we be endowed with good light within us, so that when the destroyer passes over, we're untouched. But we have to do it as a people. Come back to the law. I'm with y'all. I'm just as guilty. I like ass and titties, smoking weed and listening to rap music and partying and shit like the next nigga. But enough. The time has come to where we must realize that we cannot continue as a people to live this way. We will degrade living this way, not respecting our women, our mothers and our sisters. You feel what I'm saying? That's a sign of degradation of a people. When your women start dating people from another race, that means that race is degrading. Is that the right word? Degrading? Degrading. That's the word. Degrading. So this is the state that we're in today. Women seen as equal with men. You got women football, women's basketball, women out here at war. The shit that men do, women now do, and seen as equals. We can't go this path no more, y'all. And yeah, my words, they're not gonna fall on everybody. But those who God is talking to, those who the Most High have led to listen to these words, which are not mine, I'm only reading. This is for you. And you will be saved in the coming destruction that we are now at the footstep of. These mugs, these rich people out here, they look it up. They got whole combines underground. 300,000 people can live in them all over the world. Will you be in that shit? No. God will save his people. God will save his people. Are you God's people? Let me continue, man. It says, so awesome was the fearful aspected thing that the memory mercifully departed from man. We don't have no memory of this. There's no, only thing we got is if you open your eyes, you can see petrified buildings, petrified trees, whole civilizations being swept away with buildings intact, being buried under mud. It says, so awesome was the fearfully aspected thing that the memory mercifully departed from man. His thoughts were smothered under a cloud of forgetfulness. Man survived, but he was not the same. The sun was not as it had been, and moon was taken away. He looked up into the heavens above, in fear for the placid skies who would hold a terrifying secret. Wow. So in this, it says, whatever happened to the 10 lost tribes? A reasonable question to ask if you're into studying migration patterns of ancient people. According to the late historian Glenn Kimball, the tribes descendants of Exodus were never really lost at all. So what gave Kimball the confidence to say this? Quite simply, the lost tribes can be found deep within the Kolbrine manuscripts. It's true. Kimball studied the Kolbrine text for many years and ultimately came to the conclusion that the Kolbrine can rightfully be called the lost Bible of the 10 tribes. A bold declaration to be sure. However, that being said, I wholeheartedly agree with Kimball. In my latest installment, I will address the 10 tribes' connection to the Kolbrine manuscripts by outlining the following points. Supply evidence of the Kolbrine manuscript and the Kolbrine alphabet are authentic. Follow the lost 10 tribes' migration and settlement within the British Isles, taken from the Kolbrine text. That's true. They did go to the British Isles, but not all of the Israelites. Only some of them. That's like saying the entire black race left left Detroit and went to Texas to find work. Only some, you know what I'm saying? Not all of the tribes went in the same directions. And you will find that. You got some that went to Asia. You got some, you know what I'm saying, that went to Russia. You got some that went to the Netherlands. You got some that went to the Americas. Some even, again, as said, went to Irish and Britain. So the 10 lost tribes, these are the 10 lost tribes. We're not talking about Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. We know where they at. Okay, uncover details within, this is what she's gonna do. She says she's gonna uncover details within the Kolbrine manuscripts to support at least one seafaring journey to North America. Got that. Got the Decalogue stone and many other proofs that the Israelites came to the Americas long before Christopher Columbus. It said, divulged warnings from the lost tribe prophet Elidor, linking his prophecy to a returning celestial object called the Frightener or Destroyer. You will be surprised who he really is. The Elidor is Jeremiah. So in my book, Planet X and the Kolbrine Bible Connection, I put forth arguments that the Destroyer is clearly defined within the Kolbrine manuscript, linking Nibiru, Planet X, and the Destroyer as well being one of the same celestial objects. As a Nibiru researcher, Nibiru, that's in the writings of Nibiru, describing the Destroyer. It's called Nibiru. That's in the Sumerian text. Says, as a Nibiru researcher, this is important because the biggest point I'm driving at in this article is the fact that the lost tribes also knew all about the returning planetoid. That after all, what's a planetoid? Can I? Okay. After all, the Kolbrine is still their Bible. Yes, bro. The Kolbrine is your book, Israelites, preachers, pastors. That's your book. You better pick it up. You better read it. It's your book. So she goes on and she authenticates in her way the Kolbrine manuscripts, and I believe she brings up some great points that I also will adopt when I teach. And I have found other instances in the Kolbrine Bible that prove that it is an authentic book. It's authentic. It's authentic, Judah Nash, Davion, Black Jesus Minister, JJ 7000. All you niggas, bro, it's authentic. All right? Let's take a look at 3 verses. Exhibit 1. Gleanings 12 and 40. I read the book of Gleaning, so I know what it means. It means gleaning. GLN is gleaning. Chapter 12, verse 47. Yosira taught the people that the power of Hoku resides not in the flesh of the body, but in the bones, and that each bone contained the essence of all being, man and woman. That's DNA. In this verse, Kolbrine clearly identifies DNA found within bone marrow. The double helix DNA strand wasn't discovered until 1953. Headlines read throughout the world. The secret life had been found. Yet the Kolbrine manuscript confirmed the long ago saying, in each human bone contained the essence of all being. DNA, that's right. Exhibit 2 in the book of Gleanings, chapter 4, verse 19. Great stones were hung from the ropes of platoid leather, and the ship, 300 cubits long, was without masts or oars. This Kolbrine verse clearly identifies ancient anchor stones. The photograph to the right, I don't have that. I downloaded. I created a PDF out of this stone in Iraq desert. I did see that before. That's the Noah. That's the assumption that the anchor stones came from Noah's ship. That's why it's in Mount Ararat Desert, the region near Dogubeyats. Okay. This is a stone weight obviously hung from an immense ship from ancient times, confirming, in my opinion, the validity of Noah's Ark. In Gleanings 3, verse 5, it's written, in the olden times there were spawned great beasts in fearful form, with frightful gnashing teeth and long ripping claws. An elephant was but a rat in comparison with them. Then, over time, the beasts were changed to stone with its fossils. 3,600 years old, they're telling you about fossils. This was before times when the destroyer slumbered in the upper vaults. Then in the last verse of the Kolbrine clearly identifies dinosaurs. Not only that, it describes them becoming fossilized, changed to stone. In Haddonfield, New York, New Jersey, The first official American dinosaur was discovered in 1858. We got dinosaurs discovered, first discovery to the public, being made to the public, is discovered in 1858. Fossils were found in the states before this date, although their true nature had not been correctly deduced. Again, Kolbrine manuscripts was written centuries before 1858 and already contained information on dinosaurs, which also tells me this manuscript is genuine. I agree. Authenticity of the Welsh Kolbrine alphabet. For over 200 years now, the Kolbrine alphabet has been ridiculed, scoffed at, and targeted as an outright forgery. Historically speaking, there seems to be a deep-rooted animosity attributed to this language, which is well beyond my scope of research here. Thus, I will leave for others to debate as the reasons why. That being said, the British history researchers Alan Wilson and Baron Blackett have broken new grounds and declared the Kolbrine alphabet to be authentic. See below. The ancient ciphers of the alphabet were preserved by Llewellyn Zion of Glamorgan around 1540 to 1560 AD. Therefore, it is known which cipher means which modern letter of our present alphabet. The elucidator is a frame made of sticks, some three-sided, others squared, and on the flat surface which were carved the baric aphorisms. Three-sided ones contain a complete triad. Wilson and Blackett go on to say the alphabet is identically described by matching British records in the Nag Hammadi documents. That's another book. Y'all need to get that. If you want the true New Testament, read the Nag Hammadi documents of the Gnostic Church, the Church of Knowledge. It says that were buried before AD 400 and discovered in 1945. Large numbers of Welsh medieval poets mention and describe the ancient British alphabet, starting with Dalft, Op, and Guam, died AD 1367 and going on to 1475. Rice Gosh of Oswestry wrote a poem lampooning this Kolbrine alphabet in 1582 AD. Therefore, allegations that this ancient British alphabet is fake, that was forged around 1800, is ludicrous. Okay, so that makes sense. Some shit that was written and already in circulation to be known of is in 1580 was being spoken of in 1582. So how is the claim that it was forged and created in the 1800s? That's why she said it sounds ludicrous, and I agree. It says the Qumri, as in, is it like the Qumran text? Okay, get it? The Qumran. Is this why the people hid the books? Because of that cataclysmic event? Because they knew the events would occur? I don't think it was because of war, right? The narrative is because war was set out and they went and hid the text. But what if it was because they had knowledge of said event and they wanted to forewarn their people or tell their people about history after the event, and they put them in caves and inside of jars to preserve the knowledge. It said thirdly, it says firstly, the tribes were known to the ancient Assyrian emperors and kings as the Qumri people, so not Israelites. They were not known as Israelites during the time of the Assyrians. They were known as the Qumri people. Secondly, the nation of Qumri was actually misnamed as the Welsh by the ancient Saxons, using the High German Anglo-Saxon word Walish, meaning stranger. Thirdly, it's not surprising then that the same migrating Qumri people spoke the same language as the ancient Welsh, which can be read on ancient stones in Wales, Scotland, and England between 200 and 600 AD. and even as late as 1100 AD, 1120 AD. So I have information on the Israelites in Scotland, in Ireland, and in Wales, and in England, and every other European place abroad. We are the survivors of a great cataclysmic event, and we hold the knowledge of the earth in our DNA. So with this connection established, one can retrace the Qumri route by identifying the ancient Kolbrine alphabet inscriptions along the Qumri migrating trail. Wilson and Blackett write, there are traditions of the ancient British Kolbrine alphabet being identical with the ancient Etruscan, Ratian, and Pelagian alphabets. Even Julius Caesar makes mention of this alphabet. Caesar describes the ancient British alphabet circa 55 BC. Says Aminius Marcellinus also described the British alphabet and actually stated that the Greeks got their alphabet from the British. From Assyria, the Qumri, left Armenia and migrated westward through Asia Minor. That's true. I got information that shows this. Because the Israelites converted the Khazars, right? So you had white Khazars, you had black Khazars. The Israelites converted them, so that's true history. All right, the alphabet appears in the Aegean and in the ancient Palestine and Egypt. From the Dardanelles in Asia Minor, half of these people went into Italy and found Eritrea in 650 BC, and the remaining half sailed for Britain in 540 BC, 400 BC. Further evidence this language is legitimate can be found in the Athens Museum. A rather large stone resides there inscribed with the ancient British Kolbrine alphabet found in Lemnos Island in 1876. Other artifacts have also surfaced, reported by Wilson and Blackett. A strange Qumric triad notion of around 1,000 years ago indicates Egyptian connection and specifically refers to hieroglyphic writings. The clear inference is that Qumric is the basic language of the hieroglyphics at that time. Professor Sir John Morris Jones wrote a thesis in 1898 that demonstrated how the complex Qumric syntax and that of the ancient Egypt were identical. Plus, the fact that the same 7 vowels, A, E, I, O, U, W, Y, were used in ancient Egypt and the Qumri. We just read the Qumri. We know that. So y'all don't know that. I know. I know this. The Israelites were in Egypt, and the sons of Joseph ruled in Egypt after this event. So I don't subscribe that all the Israelites left Egypt, just as some of the Egyptians many of the Egyptians attached themselves to the Israelites at the Exodus. So did many of the Israelites also stay behind. It says, so to sum up here in a quick synopsis of the Qumri migration pattern, it starts with the destroyer overhead. The Israelites flee Egypt under Moses, circa 1628 BC. After wandering in the desert, they settled in Canaan, only to be uprooted north to Armenia by the Assyrians in 740 and 702 BC. I got 744 actually. It said they migrated towards the west through Tarsus Mountains, that's Spain, in 687 BC and reached the Dardanelles sea route by 650 BC. At this point, approximately half the Qumri people migrated to Italy. The other half congregated on Lemnos Island in 504 BC, along with the Trojans, and set sail for the Rock of Gibraltar, the British Isles, and ultimately North America. Yes, I realize there's a lot to digest, she says, especially if one has never heard of the Qumri people. So as you read the extensive Kolbrine passages I provided I provided, keep in mind, this is from the lost tribe's point of view. Using this context, you will gain new insight into their wanderings and past history that is not well known to us. The Qumri forefathers and ground zero. Since there is no question large-scale natural catastrophes can force people to migrate, a natural trigger event can induce mass movements of the population very quickly, and a classic example of this comes from the Exodus in the Old Testament. So, I mean, why would people leave areas where food is sprouting out of the ground seasonally? They mastered the land. Why would they leave? And I want you to think about this from a biblical perspective. Why would they leave? Because of cataclysmic events. Check this out. It says, on the great night of the destroyer's wrath, when terror was at its height, there was a hail of rocks, and the earth heaved up pain as rent her bowels. Gates, columns, and walls were consumed by fire, and the statues of gods were overthrown and broken. People fled outside their dwellings in fear and were slain by the hail. Those who took shelter from the hail were swallowed when the earth split open. The habitations of men collapsed upon those inside. We read this. It shows how the Israelites, so basically the Israelites leave. And then it shows that it says the Qumri gives a detailed account regarding the state of Egypt well after the destroyer flyby. I read that. It said the Qumri reflect upon their migration in Asia Minor. So this is in the Sons of Fire. This is a good book as well. It says, we took refuge with the sons of Utino, whose father had been in the land many generations, for they had come out of Egypt in the days of Pharaoh Nephori. There on the borderland, we dwell in caves from Kathleen. We were without books or possessions, but we were diligent and labored to make the land fruitful. We knew ourselves as the brothers in light, but others called us the children of light, even as we are called to this day. The land of our fathers and our inheritance has been lost to us forever. Their homes have been returned to the sands, and their altars where they worship cast down. Their temples have been destroyed, and forms of worship practiced there are no longer known. What causes have we for sorrow? Right now, we are in the bountiful land. We have hope for We have hope for the future and an unshakable faith, better by far than all else. We have with us the key to the ancient portal of communication. The portal of communication is what? The ancient portal of communication is the ark. The priests go before the ark and they speak to the Most High. He appears between the two cherubs. He said, the land of our fathers is denied to us, so now we must seek another. For a man without a nation is more heavily afflicted than any orphan. Egypt was a land destined for greatness. Its people should have led all others towards great light. Egypt failed in its destiny because those who were entrusted with power and position proved unworthy. Its kings, who should have reared families dedicated to goodness and inspiration, betrayed their trust to satisfy the weakness of men. The leaders of God who were misled and became ensnared in the deserts of worldliness, and those who followed them were betrayed. The priesthood became corrupt when it offered a life of ease and abundance instead of a life of service and austerity. The ideas of men were above reproach, but man himself was unworthy of them. We have no need to change ideas, but to attain them we must change men. The sacred lore of Egypt, enshrining the treasure of the ages, was possessed by only a select few who safeguarded it as nothing else ever been guarded because of its greatness. Not only this, but even a little knowledge of it could be dangerous in the hands of any who sought to utilize it improperly. The Sons of Fire, chapter 1, verse 14. Of all desirable things attainable by man, the assurance of his immortality, clear insight into the purpose behind his creation, and true knowledge of the road towards the fulfillment of his destiny are the greatest. Those were the things so closely guarded, and just as they are most desirable things on earth, so are they most highly priced and difficult to attain. The Kamuri build a seaport in Iberia near the Rock of Gibraltar. So we got Israelites in Iberia. It's almost 8 o'clock. I gotta do my workout, y'all. I fasted for like 3 days and lost 7 pounds, dog. Can you believe that? So what I've been doing, I decided to do is fast for 3 days every week. So at this rate, by the end of summer, I should be walking around with my shirt off. All right, check this out. It says the Sons of Fire. Hold on, let me see. The Kolbrine manuscripts we read the Kumri tribe, Sons of Fire, built a port near the bay of a great rock. From my study, the European geography, there is only one great rock guarding a large bay, the Rock of Gibraltar. Apparently, it was foggy and a lot during their stay, so the Sons of Fire named the place Land of Mist. And it's captured right here below. But check this out. Even the sons of Japhet came with the Israelites. The Sons of Fire came to the land of Mist. They and their household and their cattle and all tools of craftsmen were with them came others, men of Egypt and men of Javan. Javan is Japhetic, the sons of Japhet. It says also strangers who were not. So this Javan also, I believe, are your Ashkenaz, your Ashkenazi Jews. Hold on, let me see something. Ashkenaz in the line of Japhet. And say justice. Okay, so they from Gomer, who is from Japhet. So let me see something. Khazar. So, in the Travels of Marco Polo, is written that the 10 tribes, the tribe of Manasseh, converted the Khazars, and they actually sold their children to the Israelites as slaves, and it's written after like I believe 7 years of slavery, the Israelites give you a choice to convert to the faith, and you are considered one of them. But get back. It says, so with them came others, men of Egypt and men of Javan, also strangers who were not as valiant as the sons of fire. Many among them were sickly and distressed in their hearts. They took land among the barbarians and built a city and a port at a place called Sedel, and cut roads about it into the forest. But they were kept in by barbarians and strangers in a strange land. The city was a place for buying and selling, and men came and went, and ships came bearing cloth and pottery, instruments and weapons of war, and all manner of things. The ships went away bearing things from the barbarians who dug the soil. The place of the city was good, for it was fertile and well watered, and the bay was guarded by a great rock. Hezekiah, the Qumri leader, Hezekiah, governed many years in the land of the midst and made laws and died in old age. When Hezekiah was past 80 years of age, he sent to Palasi for the remnants of the children of light. None of them came, for they said it was not to meet them. It was not meant for them to journey to the edge of the earth to dwell among barbarians. They said, we will retain the light here, for out there it surely is distinguished. Later 4 ships did come, but they carried standards of Asheritzim, and with them came Enos Hasudim, the son of Dan, a learned man from the slopes of the mountain which rests in darkness and reaches up to the light, to the limits of light. He knew Hezekiah when a child. Then there came also one named Zodak, who had dwelt in Twalis, and he brought with him all the books of the children of light. And that's true, because Zodak is the priest, and the priest's job is to remember as a child coming up all of the books and write and be able to write them from memory. So Zodak came with many men who knew the mysteries of metal, and they brought with them the light of Amos. When they came, the spirit of Hezekiah had already joined his father. Before his spirit took wings, Hezekiah wrote. So this already, I don't even got to go no further, because I mean, it's already proven that these are Israelites. The Israelites wrote this. You feel what I'm saying? And I would have to get into great detail, and it had to come from other books as well, showing you that in these lands, Israelites have left remnants of themselves. So where it is written, we are truly a people of the world, scattered to the 4 corners of the earth. Yeah, I'm gonna end this lesson right here. I suggest, this is called the Sons of Fire, which is also written, go back to here for y'all to see. Sons of Fire, the book of the manuscripts. So what I read from was the book of the manuscripts and the Sons of Fire, the book of gleanings, and the creation, which all tells, read this book too, Origins. This all tells of the coming events, and the same thing happens over and over. The reactions that man give over and over. This is not only here, this is also in the Bible. If I go to, is it Jeremiah? Jeremiah 25. I put 23. Oh. Go down here and we read. It's going to be the same thing. See, I am beginning to bring disaster on the city that bears my name, and you will indeed go unpunished. You will not go unpunished. He said, will you indeed go unpunished? You will not go unpunished, for I am calling down a sword on all who live on the earth. A sword of all who live on the earth, declares the Lord Almighty. Now prophesy all these words against them, saying to them, the Lord will roar. Remember, roar from on high. He will thunder from his holy dwelling and roar mightily against his land. He will shout like those who tread the grapes, shout against all who live on the earth. The tumult, loud noise, will resound to the ends of the earth, for the Lord will bring charge against the nations. He will bring judgment on all mankind and put the wicked to the sword, declares the Lord. This is what the Lord Almighty says. Look, disaster is spreading from nation to nation. A mighty storm is rising from the ends of the earth. Where did the storm come from? Where did this destroyer come from? The ends of the earth. So at the time, those slain by the Lord will be everywhere, from one end of the earth to the other. They will not be mourned or gathered up or buried, but will be like dung lying over the ground. What did you see in the book of the Kolbrine? Niggas was laid everywhere, spread from left to right. I'm telling y'all, this is the Kolbrine Bible is a companion book to the Holy Bible. The Nag Hammadi, the Kolbrine Bible is a companion to the Old Testament, and the Nag Hammadi is a companion to the New Testament. You gotta read those. I'm telling y'all, if you give a damn about your salvation, is not in Jesus, read these books. Jesus is allegory for what's to come. It's like Santa Claus. He knows when you are sleeping. He knows when you awake. Feel what I'm saying? It's an allegory. So keep the law is what my point is. That's the only way out of this. The only way out. Tell and teach your family so they also be saved. If the time is close, which I believe that it is, we have already begun to see the sun crab red. I've never seen that before. And here it is in our midst. Come on, man. It says niggas gonna be lying around the ground like dung, and nobody gonna bury them. Why? Because the earth gonna be in turmoil, and it won't be no construct. It won't be any order. It said, weep and wail, you shepherds. Roll in the dust, you leaders of the flock. Why? Because the animal is gonna be killed. That's what it says. They gonna be ripped to shreds by the wind, and those that survive is gonna be roaming the earth and randomly picked up. You don't own nothing. If I see a lamb and I survived that cataclysmic event and I see lamb, I ain't gonna be thinking about this is Peter's lamb. He got his markings on it. Nothing belongs to anyone, is what the scriptures say. In that day, it says, for your time to be slaughtered has come. You will fall like the beasts of the rams. The shepherds will have nowhere to flee. The leaders of the flock, no place to escape. Hear the cry of the shepherds, the wailing of the leaders of the flock, for the Lord is destroying their pasture. The peaceful meadows will be laid waste because of the fierce anger of the Lord. Like a lion, he will leave his lair, and their land will become desolate because of the sword of the oppressor and because of the Lord's fierce anger. Okay, so here we have the same events prophesied by Jeremiah. Same, almost verbatim. So I'm rocking with the Kolbrine, yo. And I suggest y'all too. If you want spiritual, you feed your flesh all day. What happened when you feed your flesh? You get fat. You take care of the fleshly being. You spirit, you heaven and earth. You spirit and flesh. You have to feed your spirit, man. for balance. If you fat, then your spirit, then your fleshly man rules you. Your flesh rules you. And your spirit man is subdued. So you see me walking around here, fat as hell. That's because my flesh is not in submission and it rules me. And that's true. When I finish eating, what's the next move? Smoke. Pleasure. The pleasure of the flesh. That's the death of us, y'all. That's the death of us. But I appreciate all those who came by. I wanted to get this lesson out. I never did a lesson on YouTube before. I mean, on Facebook before. I normally go to YouTube. My channel was the Arguments Lead Man's Cave. I also have Pseudosciences University, where I prove that much of mythology is actually truth. And I got my music channel, which is the Land Single page, where I do my music at. Man, I encourage all of you to come by and subscribe. Okay? If you enjoyed this, give me a like, you know what I'm saying? And follow. And you can also hit my Cash App. It's $Lance1. I do appreciate it. I don't go back to work until June 28th. I will be giving y'all this work all the way until that date, every day until that date, if I'm allowed to. Again, thank you for coming by, and your boy Land Single is out.
Like, the dude is literally on a panel watching women twerk.